Ah, well, it's the last day, all right? It's just before we leave. It's a very trying to think of the words, emotional, overwhelming, awesome, amazing. 3 weeks or two and a half, almost 3 weeks here in Sierra Leone. So it's been a great trip.
Okay. So what is the most memorable thing that happened on this journey?
So the most memorable, hands down, has to be the welcome home ceremony at the Mende Gabo village. That, hands down. For those who don't know, I did my African ancestry DNA test with various parts of my family and traced various parts. And one of the lineages I have is with the Mende tribe in Sierra Leone. That's my grandmother's, or my mother's grandmother's maternal lineage. And it's interesting that that's the first place that in terms of my lineage, I have Fulani, I have Takar, I have Bubi in my lineage, but it's funny that's very interesting that that's the first lineage that I have.
Ceremony
To
itself.
me, actually, was when they carried me in the hammock from the highway into the village and into the reception area. They carried me in a hammock, and that is normally reserved for the paramount chiefs because their foot's not supposed to touch the ground. So, I remember when they say, "Oh yeah, you get to travel in the hammock," and I'm like, "I'm not a chief," and they go, "No, for you today." And I'm like, "Wow." And while I was being carried in, they were singing "Home Again, Home Again, Home Again. When will I see my home again?" That was very emotional. Well, actually, we started off the trip. We're going to Bunce Island, the Bunce Island where the slave port was, that basically served at that time in the major area of Sierra Leone. And that was kind of touching because most likely that would be where my maternal link to the Mende tribe, that would be most likely where she was kept captive, and most likely where she was transported onto the slave ship and brought to the Americas and the Caribbean. So basically, just to be where she would have been shackled up and where her last steps on African earth would have been. So it was kind of nice in a way to, like, I'm coming back and stepping back forth on where she last stepped forth. So it's kind of like a big circle. Right, so.
And we're really glad you were able to pour libation.
Yes,
Call out the
pour
names of the
libations and
vessels.
everything like that. And actually, also when we were at the Mende, the village, it was just a sense of. I mentioned it in my speech that, I think her soul is now at rest because, her lineage, her ancestors, her descendants are now back to where she belonged. That was very interesting too because on my father's side of the family is the teachers. They're all teachers, even some of my cousins. And my dad was very, very passionate about teaching and that sort of thing. So, it was interesting that on my dad's side of the family, in terms of all his siblings, none of his children, meaning myself and my siblings, took up teaching. But but we all kind of dabbled in it in one way or the other. As my sister says, you could run from it, but you can't hide. It's in the blood. So to go back and to go to the school and actually, be in a setting almost similar to what he would have taught in when my dad was a teacher back in Trinidad. Almost a similar type setting. It was very eerie, very interesting. I'm sure he was up there smiling and saying, yes, that's my seed. And their welcomeness and openness and willing to learn. And it's different from the set of kids that you find in Canada. So yeah, that was good. It was good to see, and I, I hope that they got a lot of out of what we both taught them, and that they build on it, and that out of that seeds that you and I planted, that in the future there'll be a future successful, a lot of them actually successful writers and businesswomen. Well, this was a long overdue um, journey, but as my grandmother would say, nothing happens before its time. And everything that happened on this whole trip and the way the trip um, was formulated and put together, and how, and in terms of how many people attended, it was just divine. It was just divine intervention, the way things went, because I, it's hard to fathom how things would have worked out differently. Things would have been a lot different with different people and everything else. So, for me, this was an amazing, once in a lifetime journey, and it's actually now the beginning of a number of journeys, because now I would also like to now explore and meet my other lineages. African lineage, Fulani, Itakar, Bubi. I would love to go and see my other lineages. For anybody who has thought about doing it, it's a must. And I mean, growing up, I always thought about coming back to Africa, but it was just with no purpose, because I didn't know where I was from. I didn't know where to start. Where do you start? The most common thing you're thinking about was, okay, I'll go to South Africa because Nelson Mandela. Okay, yeah, that's what I'll go to. But that's not where I'm from, right? My lineage is not from South Africa, so I would be just basically a tourist. Well, here I am amongst my people, so that's more of a wholesome experience, more gratifying experience. And for those who, again, are thinking about it, it's for me, it's a must do, and it's priceless. You can't really put a price tag on it. Some of the things that you'll do, some of the things you'll see, and some of the food that you'll eat and stuff like that. And also just to see some of the similarities between African life here and life back home. You could actually see how certain traditions, certain methods of cooking and stuff, you can see how it was passed down through time and through generations. You could actually see it, because life here is kind of similar. Oh man, one word, that's hard. There's like a number of words that you could use that really pop up to mind, and to use one overall. Oh man, I'll just say I can't use. I have to use two: amazing and priceless. Those are the two that just keep popping up.